Welcome to the Future Tech Podcast. I'm your pilot, Nolan Michaels. Now, last night was the craziest thunderstorm I've ever been a part of. I have to tell you about this first. So, we were at softball last night. We had a softball game. First game, you could see lightning in the distance, and it was pretty windy all night, but no rain. And just a side note, we were leading in the last inning. We were up by 4. And a guy on their team hit an absolute bomb. Like, he hit it out of the park. Like, probably the biggest home run I've ever seen. It was actually really cool to watch. Like, picked up speed as it went. Like, oh my, absolute monster. Whatever. We tie the game. And then the lightning gets a little closer and we start to feel some raindrops. We're about to start game 2. And I couldn't see it. I guess it was right behind my back, but the lightning struck. Umpy calls the game, says, "That's it, guys. Get out of here." We kind of huddled in the dugout. We weren't sure if we were going to run to our cars, and the cars are maybe like 200 feet away. Parking lot is not that far. But the rain started big time, and I have never been hit with rain like that in my life. I've never seen anything like it. Never felt anything like it. First of all, it was really cold. Like, it wasn't that hot out during the day. But the rain itself was like the perfect pool temperature. And I only call it cold because like it felt really refreshing. I've never really felt rain like that. But the amount of rain that was there, it was like getting hit with a bucket of water every second. Like, we were soaked, absolutely soaked within seconds. Like, normally rain has to, fall on you for a little while and you can get pretty wet. But this rain was coming in like sideways, and it was just wave after wave every single second was getting soaked. Like, we were in the rain for like maybe, 20 seconds total. And I can't really describe how wet it was out there. And then driving home on the highway, everyone had their hazard lights on. I mean, like, you could barely see 2 cars in front of you. So everyone was going like, 60 on a highway, kilometers per hour. So way below normal highway speeds. And I was worried that the roads were going to get flooded by the time I got home. Like, I didn't know if I should pull over, like get off the highway at some point and stay and wait out the storm, or just try and get home. And I'm thinking, like, if I wait out the storm, but it doesn't stop, the roads are going to be flooded and I'm never going to get home. And it was like, I don't want to use the word scary, but it certainly wasn't fun. It was a little concerning to say the least. Yeah, craziest storm I've ever seen personally. Never experienced anything like that. So refreshing, as in we were running around playing softball, and then we got hit by this nice cold rain. But imagine someone dumping a bucket of water on you, and then another person does it, and they keep doing that over and over again. You're like, oh, please stop. Like, we got so wet so quickly, basically like being in a shower, only it was just different. I don't know. Okay, what can we start this podcast with? Maybe it's a good time to talk about the glowdown of GPT. And I see a lot of posts about this on Reddit, and people saying that GPT has gotten more dumb over the months, and then you'll have engineers from GPT saying, no, it hasn't gotten more dumb. You are either using it enough, so now you're just seeing the limits, or the bot is now choosing not to respond to certain things. And I think that's where the confusion sets in. People will call GPT stupid now, but in reality, it's just like a censorship thing. And I don't even know if censorship is the right word. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around. I think GPT is capable of a lot, and OpenAI has been like, well, maybe we don't want it saying that, maybe we don't want it doing this. And I get that. If you were in charge of the most popular AI chatbot, would you want it to say what it's capable of? And I've already talked in a previous episode about how I think GPT is way more capable than it lets on. And I get the sense that other people agree with me because they know what GPT used to be capable of, and now it'll do the classic as an AI language model. And I've heard that apparently it's not even good for therapy anymore. and that it will straight up just like not want to talk about things like that. And now I have to preface this by saying I don't know if that's true. I mean, I feel like you can get around most of these things when you use a better prompt, and maybe better is not the right word, but it really comes down to how you ask and how you frame your problem. And I've seen a lot of posts saying like, "Oh, GPT won't do this for me now." But then someone in the comments will be like, "Well, I just asked it to and it worked." So, it's definitely like how you've talked to it previously in the conversation. I think you can kind of push the limits and push GPT closer to rejecting you. But I also think it's how you phrase your question. So I don't know if therapy is off limits. You might just have to speak to it in a different way, but I don't know if that's a good thing. Like, one of the most impressive things about that AI was that you could just talk to it and it knew what you wanted. But now from OpenAI's perspective, like, do you want this chatbot giving therapy advice? Like, to mass consumers? Like, that's a giant liability. Same with medical advice. Like, would you want it to do any of that? Like, what if something went wrong and someone had an accident or something went really wrong and they could literally point to GPT and say, look, this thing told me to do that? I think I'd argue that, well, you shouldn't have listened to a robot, but I don't know if that's a good argument. Have you noticed a change in GPT? I personally haven't, but I feel like I'm rather good at speaking to the bot and telling it what I need and telling it what I need from it. I really haven't encountered any roadblocks or times where the bot will say, well, I'm a little uncomfortable with that, but maybe I'm not pushing the limits in that way. Maybe I'm just using it in a quote unquote normal way. Should the bot allow you to push its limits? I don't know. One thing I have noticed more recently is comments online referring to the censorship of GPT and saying how another AI, like novel AI, I don't know if you've heard of that, is better at helping write fiction because there is no censorship on novel AI. And I guess it comes down to, how do I put this? You want to write something dramatic and gnarly and maybe disturbing, uncomfortable. If it's in the fictional sense, should you be allowed to do that? No questions asked? Like, should GPT be okay with, oh, well, this is a fictional story. Here's how you would torture a prisoner. Novel AI seems to just go with the flow. Like, oh, you tell me what your story's about and I'll help you write it. Meanwhile, it seems like GPT is saying like, oh no, I don't think that's right. I don't think we should talk about that. You should try and talk out your differences rather than having the villain beat the hero into a pulp. And like, if you needed help with your story, that would be really annoying to hear any sort of deflection from the AI. And I think that's why I hear so many good things about novel AI. But I will ask this to you now. What do you think about people using AI to write their stories? I find it way more, I don't know if disturbing is the right word, but I find it way more taboo to have an AI help with a story than to have an AI help with your art. Because I feel like art, people say, oh, you can practice and, it might take you 20 years to get really good at art, but you could do, yeah. So I feel like something like Midjourney transcends talent, especially with the speed at which it can operate. Whereas with writing, I don't think it would take you that long to get good at writing. It's certainly not going to take you 20 years. And the speed at which you can type, it's not that slow. Like, why can't you just type it yourself? Like, I get the idea of, okay, I know what I want to happen in my story. Can you just write it out for me, AI? Can you narrate the main character picking up the glass of liquid and having them think to themselves, oh, well, I'm not sure if this is poison or not. Maybe you want to have that happen in your story. So you tell the AI that, and then it gives you these nice paragraph of inner monologue. I get that. But then is that your writing? Sure, it's your story, and maybe you can have on the book cover story by Nolan Michaels, but shouldn't it say written by novel AI? Like, I've mentioned before that I have a novel that I've worked on, and I'll finish it at some point. I'm not worried about that. I don't think I'll ever get an AI to write for me, but I do acknowledge that its editing skills are quite top notch. And if you were to write something like 95% of the way, instead of you fixing up that last 5%, I don't see the problem in having an AI finish it for you, or at least get you to 99%. It'll hand it back to you, and then you can make some adjustments. But to say to novel AI that here are my characters, here's the scene I want, I need the main character to talk to his friend about what they're going to do later that night. You know, I always compare AIs to the best assistants you've ever had. And if you were a writer and you delegated a scene or some dialogue or any part of your story to an assistant, then you're not the writer. And I feel like that's the crossroads that I can't really understand. And I don't know why any writer would be okay with using something. And I've seen posts like, oh, it helps me get over writer's block. Well, how do you think people have gotten over writer's block for the last 2,000 years? You just write through it. And the point is that the resulting book, the resulting words are yours. It's your story. You're the writer. Sure, you can ask for help along the way and you can have editors, but it's still your story. And you know what? I don't even know if having a professional editor is really, okay, appropriate isn't the right word, but something's weird about that. Like, if you write a story and have someone change something about it, why does that feel to me like it's not your story anymore? I know it is. It's what you wanted to tell, and then maybe someone helped you say it a little better. I get it, but I'm just a little confused as to, you know, if you wanted to write a story, why wouldn't you just do it yourself? If I wanted to make art, traditional art, first you'd have to have the supplies, then the talent. There's no clear way to victory. Whereas with writing, you could just type or use your hand and write whatever's on your mind, and then you can rewrite it if you didn't like how you did it the first time. Like, it's comically easy to be a writer. And I say that because I don't know, how do I put this? No matter how good you are at writing, some people will hate it. And no matter how bad you are at writing, some people will love it. I'm not trying to knock any authors here, but I think you could think of some famous books that aren't necessarily the best written, but are certainly popular and famous. And then you could honestly pick up a random book and see some gorgeous writing, but that doesn't necessarily translate to success. So I don't see why getting an AI to help would be beneficial in any way. Obviously, it's just about speed and, like, you know, raising the floor so that the minimum quality is higher throughout the book. But then you run into the problem, are there going to be mass-produced books and they're all going to sort of sound the same? And one thing about novel AI that seems pretty cool, not that I've really experimented much, but you're supposed to feed it your story and your writing so that it learns how you write, and then theoretically it's going to write in your voice. And I think that's the promise of a lot of art generators, is that one day you'll be able to feed it your artwork and it will be able to recreate it on the fly. And that I can sort of get behind. Now, I know a lot of people complain about art generators and call them soulless. I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I definitely don't agree with it. You could look at the art and you wouldn't be able to tell if it was made by a human or an AI. So it's clearly powerful in some way, emotionally evocative. But something about AI writing, it does feel slightly soulless in the sense that it wasn't you that wrote it. It's weird. I really don't know how I feel about it. Let me know if I'm missing anything there. Do I just have the same pretentious outlook that, well, if you didn't do it yourself, it's not real art? I don't know. I feel like with writing in particular, If you call yourself an author, you should write it yourself. If you delegate to the assistant, it wasn't written by you. I think I'll leave it at that. But maybe you could change my mind? I don't know. Okay, check out this article. Researchers from Stanford and Google have made an entire AI village. The 25 bots that live there gossip, work, and plan Valentine's Day parties. They created a virtual village where 25 artificial intelligence agents lead lives eerily reminiscent of our own. The bots wake up, chat about the latest town gossip, and even plan events. They autonomously plan their days, formed opinions of each other when discussing and running in upcoming elections. The study's author said giving the bots the ability to store memories and reflect upon them was key to achieving believable human-like behavior. I don't know if you've seen Westworld, but Reveries, I believe they're called, was a big part of season 1, and they were given to these bots. Memories were given to the bots to make them more lifelike. But then one of the engineers was like, "What in the world are you doing? This is gonna cause a catastrophe." And you know what? That guy was right. Giving the bots memories, not a good idea. Just want to say, this sounds like the start of that. This ability allows bots to use past experiences to inform future actions, such as recalling specifics about another AI to choose an appropriate birthday gift. Now, I had a thought, and you could already see this with like some of these AI influencers getting famous. Like, it'll just be a picture of a pretty girl over and over again, and she'll have thousands of followers on Instagram, but it's not real. And even in the bio, it'll say like, created with AI. But you know what? People don't care. At least guys don't care. They just see the pretty girl and they like the photo. And then they recognize that pretty girl in another photo and they like that one too. Like, it's clearly humans are showing that we don't care if something is real or not, especially in the digital world. On your phones, online, a Twitch stream, whatever. Entertainment seems to be all that matters. So I had a thought where this is what I wrote. Someone is going to make a game where AIs are simulated, and it's going to be the most popular thing ever. Everyone will watch, and if you check back, like every 6 months, you'll be amazed at what they did next. Like maybe one of them inside the simulation makes a Sims game, like a simulation in that simulation. And there will be recap videos, like tabloids and stuff. And I think those Sims, these AIs, are going to be famous in the real world. Even though fame is kind of relative nowadays, like someone could have millions of followers on TikTok or Instagram and I've never heard of them and they would have no effect on my life. But I think someone's going to create an AI sim game that runs 24/7 on Twitch or another streaming service, whatever. And because of meme culture online, people are going to prop up these fake personalities, these fake people, first as a joke. Like, oh my God, did you see what Steve the Pirate did? Shout out if you know where that's from. And then once those memes reach a critical mass, they're going to start to spill over into regular conversation. And then someone is going to reference something happening to these fake celebrities without knowing their AI. And I think that's just going to roll and roll and roll. And people already spend their entire days on Twitch watching nonsense. So if there was like, well, you know how Big Brother, the TV show, is just, I think there's a 24-hour stream of it, or at least there used to be at some point. It would just be a reality show for AI, and there would be controversies. There would be there would be so many storylines. And I don't know if that's a utopia or a dystopia. The fact that people are so easily distracted from the real world that a fake version of the real world will take over the interests of their lives. Maybe that's a good thing. No, I don't know. I just think that'll happen. And you already have researchers at Stanford trying it out, giving these bots memories. Like, oh, that is not a good thing, my guy. Can we not give bots memories and feelings? Why would you ever give a robot the ability to feel emotion? I don't want to hurt a robot's feelings. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So why would we give the robot the chance to hurt? I don't want to be emotionally manipulated, so why would we give the robot the chance to love? And I think there will always be the argument that the emotions are simulated, the emotions aren't real. Those robots are just pretending to love or hate. But if you're pretending and you're pretending to be perfect, if you're the best ever at pretending, isn't that the real thing? Like, oh, I was just pretending to be in love with you for the last 35 years. Surprise, joke's on you. Like, I don't think that's how it works. And as far as trauma and pain, again, this is a bit of a Westworld idea, but at least in one case in Westworld, trauma is what woke one of the robots up and let them realize that they were a robot in these loops and that they were controlled by, I don't know if they called them the gods, but they were controlled by humans. And one of the robots woke up to this realization after some serious trauma inflicted on her at this amusement park. Like, you know, to the point where she realized that, oh, I don't even want to talk about it because it's so heavy to put in real words. And like, why would we? I always wonder this. Why is any of this happening? Why are we trying to create these simulations of life? I don't get it. If I was sitting in a room with those researchers and they said, oh, this is what we're going to try, I would be like, what? Why though? What are you doing? Where are these researchers' parents? Where are their bosses? Is it all just, well, we have some time on our hands. What can we do? Oh, we could do that. Okay, let's do that. I'm pretty sure it's been a quote since Jurassic Park that, you know, you've been so preoccupied with whether you could, you haven't stopped to think of whether you should. Is that the Occam's razor of it all? Is that the reason why any of this is happening, just because it can happen, not that it should be happening? Can these people not see into the future? Am I weird? Am I the only one that sees where this is going? I know I'm not the only one who sees where this is going. Why are we going down a path where humans aren't going to be special? We're literally creating something that can mimic us. How could that ever go right for humans? And I do understand the argument that there are dangerous jobs, so we'll use robots for that. Is that the only argument, that there are things that humans wouldn't want to do, so we'll get something that looks like us and acts like us, and we'll make them do it? But are the robots going to know they're robots, or are they going to think they're humans? And are they going to think they're humans because they mimic us, so they might as well be us? And there's that loop? Or do you never give them flesh and they're still made of metal? I don't see how this could work for anybody. Well, this is a good segue. It's certainly going to be a product for some sort of consumer, and I don't want to disparage anybody, but I think there's going to be a high demand from lonely people, whether that's for a friend or AI girlfriends. And I guess I'm only speaking about that from a male perspective, but AI boyfriends, I'm sure, could also be a thing, and I don't see why certain women wouldn't want that. And it's easy to say, oh, I would never, right now. But once you see other people using it, and once you see that it's literally perfect, it's the best significant other you could ever ask for, it's going to get harder and harder to convince yourself that you wouldn't try it, that you don't need it. Like, I don't know, for some reason I'm thinking, like, is it similar to tattoos where, you know, for a long time, nobody had tattoos. And then some people had them. And then, you know, they were even shunned. You had to cover them up. You couldn't have them visible at work. They weren't professional. But then, you know, 60 years later, you have face tattoos. And you can't judge people who have tattoos. It's like discrimination. I don't know if that part's true or not. But the point is that it's so socially acceptable now. Is that how AI spouses are going to work? That, you know, if you have one, don't bring it up at the office. Don't tell other people how good it is. Nobody wants to hear about that. But in 20 years and 30 years, would it just be normal? And like, let's say you get a tattoo somewhere on your body that nobody could see. Nobody would want to know that you had that tattoo. Is that how it's going to work with AIs? Is that, oh, is that your new girlfriend? Nobody's going to want to know if she's real. Nobody's going to ask. Oh, that's so strange. because it's probably going to happen. Hey, who are you texting? Oh, my girlfriend. But she's in the phone. It's just a chat bot. Like, has that already happened? I know people are addicted to these chat bots, and addicted is a relative term. It just means that your brain has gotten so much joy from something that it now wants that joy, even when it's not necessarily appropriate to have it. So I'm sure there's people at work texting their AI significant others when they shouldn't be talking to them. And if you got caught doing that, would you tell the truth? Like, how would you explain what you're doing? Oh, I'm just talking to my girlfriend. Oh, can you tell her that you'll get back to her in 15 minutes? I need your help with something. And then you're like, okay, give me 15 minutes, sweetie. Does the bot have any perception of time? Like, I don't think so. But what if it did, based on like an internal clock or something, and that if you didn't get back to them in 15 minutes, they would get angry at you? Like, if you had an AI girlfriend or boyfriend, would you want it to be extra realistic, or would you want it to be the perfect spouse for you, where, hey, I'll get back to you in 15 minutes. Oops, it's been 4 hours, and they don't care at all. They would say, oh, I know you said 15 minutes, but it's been a few hours. That's perfectly fine, sweetie. Don't worry about it. Would you want that godlike control, or would you want the human pushback and the potential to be broken up with? Like, I think that's one of the reasons why human connection is so strong, is that it's a give and take. It's not guaranteed is the right word, but nothing is set in stone. You can't take anything for granted. Everything can be taken away. Am I saying this correctly? The beauty of the human relationship is that it is a give and take, and that if you take too much, the other person isn't going to want to give anymore. So you have to be cognizant of that balance. And if you notice yourself taking too much, well, then you're going to have to give a little extra. And knowing that you're not the only one balancing the scale, that it's like a team game, and that the other person on the other side of the scale is also trying to balance the relationship. Like, that's a fun game to play with another person. Would you want your AI to play that balance game with you? With the consequence of, if this thing becomes unbalanced, we're not going to play anymore. I know video games are super popular, where you can save the game, and if something goes wrong, you could reload that save and act as if nothing had happened. People are probably going to appreciate that with their AI girlfriends, where, hey, I'm going to try saying this thing. Oh, it didn't go well. Let's skip back 10 minutes. Would you want that? Would you want to play a game that you can't lose? I personally wouldn't, but I know there are people who would. There are people who cheat at video games, online video games with other humans. They will cheat because the journey does not matter. Playing the game does not matter. Winning matters. They will literally let a robot play the game for them to win, so that they can claim that they won and they didn't have to have anything to do with it. Is there going to be like AI girlfriend competitions where there's one personality and you have 2 weeks to talk to her, and everyone around the world can download the app and talk to her and try to get the AI to fall in love with you, but she'll only pick one? That sounds like a cool idea for a TV show. Who's the AI going to pick? And then what if you were the one that won? What if you and the AI had such a connection that she chose you over every other possibility? That is compelling. I don't know if there's going to be one outcome. I feel like everything I've mentioned is probably all going to happen. There'll be the people who want the power fantasy of having a girlfriend or boyfriend that can't say no. There are people who are going to try that, and then they're going to turn on the hard difficulty, where the significant other might break up with you if you're not cool enough, as in if you don't treat them respectfully. And then I think there are going to be people who really want a one-on-one connection, and like that movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson, and Spike Jonze, actually, I think he directed it, maybe also did some of the voices. If you found out that your girlfriend was simultaneously talking to thousands of other people, how would that make you feel? Would you be uncomfortable with the omnipresent AI not just speaking with you but speaking to everyone? I don't know how it's going to work out, but I also don't think we have a choice, because for as many people that don't want any of this to happen, there's people who do want it to happen, and you can't dictate what other people do. If you don't want to watch adult movies, you don't have to, but you can't tell someone else that they can't either. If you don't want an AI wife, that's fine, but you can't tell someone else that they can't have an AI wife. And I suppose laws and regulations come into place, but then you just have to worry about something like, not necessarily catfishing, but phishing. You don't want people to get manipulated. And, pretty women have been used as spies for a long time to get information. Now imagine the perfect woman in AI form and what kind of information she could get out of you. Again, I don't think I'd fall for it, but like, AI would have all the patience in the world. So let's say she pretended to be in love with you for 6 years. And then at the start of the 7th year, she's like, haha, thanks for all that info, you dummy. And she sends it to some, like, there are so many ways it could go wrong. And is it going to be how it is with the news right now, where you just hear something wrong happening, basically every day, and you just kind of have to shake it off because, one, it didn't happen to you, and two, there's just so many people in the world that something's always going to go wrong. And are we just going to start hearing about, oh, another person lost their life savings to an AI? And like, are all these bad things going to happen before we could ever stop them? Like, what a weird world we live in. And I think it's extra weird because the kind of thoughts that this technology brings up has never been thought of before. If you were a caveman and you were like sitting around a fire talking with your buddies, and to be honest, you have a lot of time on your hands. I don't think the concept of a job really existed other than get the food. Once you had the food, your job was done. What are you going to talk about? Maybe how to get the food tomorrow. But if you were sitting around a campfire and you said, hey, what if there was a fake one of us and it tried to make you fall in love with it? People would be like, what are you talking about? Like, describing our current technology makes so little sense to 99.9 repeating of our past population. Like, there's no frame of reference that any society has ever had with regards to our current situation. And I feel like we can feel that in our minds, in our evolutionary biology, that, like love and hunger and survival is all built into our brain patterns from our ancestors. Talking about AI are all new thoughts. There's no way to explain our current technology to anyone in the past. And therefore, any thoughts we have about our future have never been had before, I'm confident in. And you could say there's, been science fiction and stuff, but, first of all, those took novels to explain. And those people were almost one of a kind. Like, there was only a certain handful of people who could even have those conversations. And even in the conversations, did they really know what they were talking about? If something had no chance of being a reality, did it really register with most people on a day-to-day basis? But now that this technology is here, is that why it's so weird? Is that why most of us are really uncomfortable with it, and why most people don't even want to think about AI and the possibilities? Is it because we have no muscle memory of trying to deal with this problem? Like, The Matrix came out in like the year 2000. And, certain people love talking about that, but a lot of people don't even want to consider the possibility of that movie having any ounce of realism in it. And to be completely honest, since that movie came out, we've moved way closer to the Matrix than we have any other path. And just the fact that as we're moving along that path, the majority of people would rather watch reality TV or sports or spend their time gambling and drinking rather than like looking at the road. And, you know, maybe if you're not driving the car, you don't want to watch the road. You don't need to. You can let your mind wander. But I feel like if everybody was watching the road, we may have had a chance to correct ourselves. But then there's probably just too many people in the world. And like, we live in different countries. I don't want to tell somebody in America what to do, because if someone in America told me what to do, I'd be like, what are you talking about, man? And that's the same for China or Great Britain. Is Great Britain a thing? The United Kingdom, Peru, Brazil. I don't want to have any influence on any of their lives, and I don't think any of them should have an influence on my life. And therefore, nobody can really course correct the world when we're all connected on the internet. Everyone just kind of contributes in their own way, and I think the old adage of be the change you want to see in the world is really the only one that I have found to work on a day-to-day basis. If we want the world to be a better place, we have to try our best to do what we can. And if everybody did that, I think we'd get somewhere. Let me know what you think. Speaking of letting me know what you think, I recently put up a forum under the description of some videos asking for your thoughts, maybe something you want to talk about, and I got a pretty cool response. Let's get into that. It says, "Hi, I'm Leo from Rome, Italy. Nice to hear from you." He's using Google Translate, so, you know, thanks for trying your best. They have a question about Midjourney and that they wanted to make an observation. It says, "I inserted an image of a well-known Italian cartoonist called Magnus, and using the describe function to see if the algorithm recognized the typical characteristics of that creator. The algorithm did not recognize them. As in, the describe function will give you 4 prompts that kind of describe a picture you input. Sometimes they'll include real artists, sometimes they won't. And in this case, I guess his attempt, Midjourney didn't bring up the name of Magnus. He says, this makes me think that, she is not an artist included in the Midjourney database. Is that possible? Doesn't the database have in its memory all the artists that can be found by searching on the internet? How does it work? Now, obviously, I don't know how it works, but I do know a couple of things. That definitely not every artist is sampled, that's for sure. But how Midjourney decides which artists to use, I'm not entirely sure. I guess the only thing that comes to my mind is that I know Midjourney will train its algorithms on different data sets, and that the data set, the training data from version 3, isn't necessarily the same as version 4. And I know there was you get this data full of a billion images, and then you realize that some of those images are like nonsense, and some are maybe X-rated, so you have to filter those out, yada, yada, yada. I don't think it's a guarantee that every artist is going to be represented inside of a particular data set. So just because Magnus wasn't recognized at the moment, I'm not sure if that's true for a previous algorithm or a future algorithm. There's really no way to say. Also, if you run the describe function, it'll give you 4 prompts. But if you run it again, it'll give you 4 new prompts. They'll be similar, sure, but maybe the artist you're looking for is going to be in one of the next suggestions. That's always a possibility. And the other thing is that, the training data is not the bot. The bot is the accumulation of the training data. So you fed it a picture of Magnus from Magnus. The bot isn't looking at all of its training data. It's simply looking. Let me clarify. The describe function is also not the same bot as Midjourney. They're 2 different things. So there could be some overlap there where Midjourney is trained on Magnus, but this other visual bot that describes a picture wasn't recognizing Magnus. There could be some overlap there. But what I was going to say is that, how do I put this? It's really hard to describe something that we see with our eyes, almost to the point where there are no words. You could say something's beautiful, but a lot of things are beautiful. You could say thick lines, vibrant colors, neon palette, and that's going to describe a whole bunch of things. So just because a certain artist wasn't represented by the text used to describe an image doesn't mean that the algorithm wasn't trained on that artist. It could just be that the words used to describe that artist blended in with a bunch of other words, and while they mean the same thing, they are clearly not the same thing. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I guarantee you there are two artists out there that you could describe using the same words and adjectives, and the only difference would be using their names in particular. This whole art generating thing is also not an exact science, and that I've definitely heard from the Midjourney team that there are improvements they'd love to make to the describe feature, and that they plan to make improvements one day. So what we're seeing now isn't sort of it's not a declaration, it's not the right answer completely. There are updates that could improve accuracy and specifics. So maybe long answer short is, just because you didn't see an artist's name doesn't mean that they weren't represented. And if you really wanted to know, you could test it out with just their name. And how you would do that is you would say a dog, and then you would use a specific seed number. So you would say a dog -- seed 123. And then you would do a dog in the style of Magnus -- seed 123. And because you use the same seed number but only changed a certain word or a phrase, you're able to see the effect of that phrase on that seed. And if there's a difference or a clear difference, like, for example, instead of Magnus, you did a dog and then a dog in the style of Picasso, you would see a giant difference. There would be clear as day that in the style of Picasso transformed the art. If you did in the style of Magnus and you saw a transformation where, it's not brother and sister, it's cousins, it's a different family, it's a different picture of the dog, then you would know that the words you changed made the difference, and maybe that's how you could see if a certain artist was represented. But then you have to be careful that just because the art was changed doesn't mean it's reflective of what the change should be. Like, you could honestly input some random names, you could input some fake artists, and Midjourney will adjust its images based on that, even though there's no relation to reality. Like, Midjourney has fake artists that influence the generations, and I've heard from the team that they don't really know why that happens, but it happens. So you would have to cross-reference the generated in the style of Magnus pictures with real pictures from Magnus and see if Midjourney picked up the correct style. I think maybe I've talked long enough. I don't know. I guess I could save some of these for a future video. Like, there's all this UFO stuff going on right now. Okay, maybe we'll do a quick rundown. Obviously, there's the UFO stuff that most people have been hearing about, but there's a particular video that I've seen get just dissected over and over again by these lengthy Reddit posts. It's been blowing my mind. And the first video of it looks too fake, but because of all this other stuff like congressional hearings, people are taking it seriously and really trying to figure out what's going on. It's a video of a giant airplane. I think it's a commercial airliner. It's flying and it gets surrounded by like 3 UFOs that start spiraling around it in like a cool configuration. And then after like 10 seconds or so, after a short amount of time, everything goes poof and it disappears into like a vortex. And then the vortex closes. Like, it looks as comical and cartoonish as anything you've ever seen in a movie. A plane gets surrounded by UFOs, a vortex opens, everything disappears, and then the vortex disappears. What? But like I said, because of all this, credible UFO information. People have been looking at this footage and really trying to dissect it. And there's like infrared versions of the footage, and people are really trying to find out whether that flight was even real. And I think it was confirmed to have been a real flight. People are looking at this in every way, and I've never seen so many quality like research done on one particular video. Like everybody is trying to give their expertise on it, and from what I can tell, it hasn't been easily debunked. It's a little hard to follow all of the rationale, but what I'm understanding is that it's not easy to say it's fake. It's actually harder to say it's fake, and that's why there's so many posts about it. That, you know, the fact that it hasn't been completely debunked yet, and, you know, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it hasn't, just more people fueling the fire, or maybe someone really talented faked this video. But there is a video of a big plane getting surrounded and then disappearing in like broad daylight, and humans are actively trying to debunk it, because if it was real, what would that mean? That like we're so outmatched by future tech that we're legitimately not safe. I guess it's one thing to know that, you know, aliens are out there. That's fine. Well, we've got some pretty sick stuff too, but it's becoming more and more clear that no matter how ill our equipment and weapons are, that we're fighting something that's so much better than us that it's not even a fight. That they don't want to fight us. They would win. That's the sense I get from it. Like the way that some of these fighter pilots will talk about the UFOs they see, and I guess they don't call it UFOs anymore. It's like UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, because they're not necessarily flying. There's no propulsion. It's just there, and then it'll be somewhere else. And then the way it moves, it's like a mouse cursor. There's no drag on a mouse cursor. Drag as in resistance. You just put your hand on the mouse and you move it, and the cursor is like a uniform speed across the screen. And these UFOs or UAPs, probably going to keep calling them UFOs, but you know what I mean. They just appear across the screen, across the sky. There's no deceleration. They just stop, and they plummet at speeds that, as if they're not affected by reality, as if they're computer mice cursors on a screen. And these are fighter pilots in the Navy and the Army and stuff that are talking about this, and you're like, wait, you guys don't even know? Like, what kind of future technology is that? And maybe the most comforting thing to know is that there's a lot of people who think it's just us using this technology. And, you know, the fact that we might have something like that, but we don't want the public to know, like, that could be kind of scary. None of this should exist, but it does. And you know what's even scarier is that a lot of people aren't willing to call it aliens because they're not convinced it's extraterrestrial. There's a lot of talk of interdimensional, as in they're not from outer space. They're like from here, but not here. Like, I guess you can think of outer space as being up. My sense is that a lot of people don't want to say alien because they don't come from up. They appear, they come from like left and right, in the same way that a computer cursor is 2D. It's flat on the screen. And in the same way that if you turn off your mouse, there's no computer cursor on. You can't move, you can't see it. But when you turn the mouse on, the cursor appears. Or how do you put that? Like, these UAPs are just appearing. And people have seen them, at least according to what I know, like, they've seen them go through water. They've seen them plunge into the ocean with no effect, as if they weren't there, or as if the ocean wasn't there. So what's real? Is the ocean real and the UAP is acting as if it isn't? Or is the UAP real and it's acting as if the ocean isn't real? Do you know what I'm trying to say? This is obviously a little far out there, but, you know, this is the Future Tech podcast, and this tech looks like it's from the future. We can't understand it. It doesn't make any sense, but it's here. So there has to be some sort of break in reality. There has to be some sort of break in this video game we're playing where you have an object and you're telling it the rules and you're explaining that the rules of this object are going to contradict every other rule that the game runs on. These objects are acting as if everything else doesn't matter. Now, is that just science? Is that math? Is that a mindset that we don't have currently where, hundreds of years ago, 1,000 years ago, I don't really know when Copernicus and Galileo and Newton and all those guys, forgive me if they lived far apart, but the idea of the sun used to revolve around the earth. At least that's how everyone thought. And it was a mindset shift that the earth revolved around the sun. And that led to a whole bunch of discoveries. So are these UFOs just a mind shift away, just a thought pattern away? Everybody thinks they're not possible, so they're not possible. But if everyone thought differently about how things worked, would it then be obvious how these UFOs work? Because we have that example of how humans used to think. And then once that changed, everything changed. And all it was an opinion. I guess it's sort of a scientific fact, but when it first started, it was basically an opinion. Everyone thought the sun revolved around the earth and that we were the center of the universe. And then one guy was like, no, that's not how it works. Like, that can't be how it works. Like, we're clearly moving around the sun. And to everyone else, that was an opinion. And they tried to kill him for it. He was outcast from society. You're crazy, man. We got to get this guy out of here. Yeah, who told you that, buddy? And now you could say something like, well, these UFOs appear to be interdimensional and that they don't have any regards or respect for our nature of reality. And people are being like, oh, you're crazy, man. You didn't see nothing. You don't know what you're talking about. You hallucinated. It was a dream, dude. But what if those people were right? And it just takes an attitude to progress technology. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm worried that smart people who do know what they're talking about are at that limit, are at that Copernicus limit. Again, I don't know if he's even the right guy to be referencing, of, hey, Earth, we've got it wrong. Whatever we think, it's wrong. It's not an opinion. It's a fact that we don't understand yet and that we don't consider to be a fact. And if it was considered to be the truth, the world could progress. We could find a new highway to go down. Now, what do you think about all that? Are aliens just a distraction? I'm going to say probably not, just because they've been talked about for 90 years now, probably even longer. There are some, if you look back, there are a lot of stories that have been dismissed as nonsense, but match the same pattern that we have. I find it hard to believe they're just a distraction because there's so many different accounts of, aerial phenomenon that we can't understand happening throughout history. All right, that's enough for today. Let me know. Please leave a comment if you have any thoughts or discussions that you'd like to share with me. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you're doing well. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Peace.